And we are live. Good evening, folks. Welcome to the first Friday Night Tech Talk of 2025. I'm Mobile Geezer, which you know if you're watching on YouTube, you're on my YouTube channel, but you can also watch simultaneously on Facebook at either my Mobile Geezer ID or George Hayes. All three are simulcast at the same time. And if you're new here, we do this every week. We take a few stories from the last week and take some articles and talk about them. And for the year, who would be the first two people in here for the year? Well, it makes perfect sense. It's Eleanor, wishing everybody a very happy and healthy 2025. And she's been a little under the weather, so she could use a little prayer, folks. And right behind her, here's Brian showing up right on time. It's the first Friday of the year, so Happy New Year, everybody. Glad you two guys are here. Last week, we had a great week. We had all four of the original Three Musketeers, Mike, Will, and I, and D'Artagnan in Ted. So we had, that's not going to happen often, I'm sure, but it was really great to have the original crew, the solid crew, all together for the first time in, I guess it was about a year and a half. So that was great. I haven't heard anything. I know Mike is on vacation. He's down visiting friends, and Will, I guess, is doing his usual working his tail off as he does every weekend because he works two separate jobs. And you're probably just going to get me tonight unless Ted pops in, which is always great if he does. Don't mind me, I'm seeing my hand on screen that looks crooked to me. So if you're new here, please say something in the comments. Let us know where you're from, and feel free to type in the comments anything you think about any of the stories. And speaking of stories, every week I have show notes on my webpage, so let me share that with you and show you that. So we'll share a page. If you go to mobilegeezer.wordpress.com and you click on today's date, you'll get the show notes just for tonight's show. And as we do every week when we're here, we'll give you a little preview of what we're going to talk about. There were no major announcements this week, at least not that I'm over. Look at this. All the best regulars are in here. Eleanor's in here, Brian's in here, and now Annette's in here. You guys are great. Thank you for being here. So like I said, I don't think there was any big announcement this week. If I'm wrong, you guys let me know. But next Tuesday, we do have a big announcement because the U.S. version and I guess the worldwide version of the OnePlus 13 will be out. It just happened that today I had my OnePlus 12 with me at work, and I'm guessing I'll be trading this one in for the OnePlus 13. So, the other one that I had at work with me today was my Pixel 9 Pro. Great phone. These two are the two best phones I had all year. I did not do a phone of the year this year because I didn't buy that many phones in 2024, but the Pixel 9 Pro and the OnePlus 12 for me were easily my two best phones of the year, and very tight and very close. Be hard to say which one was better. So we'll do our preview while we're here on my webpage. So we're going to talk about, I just said, like the new enhanced visual search in iOS 18, there's an included risk, and nothing heavy duty, but they're sending stuff back to a server, which they didn't tell you about. And I have iOS 18, the beta on my iPhone 15 Pro Max, which I do not have with me today. So I'm glad I knew about this, but we'll be talking about it, and it's easy to turn it off. So we'll get to that. That'll be our first story. Then I thought it was kind of a big deal. because net neutrality has been struck down. And no, it's not Trump's new administration, it's by the Sixth Circuit. And I found that story on The Verge, so we'll take a look at that. And personally, I want to see net neutrality stay, but my guess is it's probably going for a while this time. But we'll take a look at that story. Then, U.S. Treasury Department admits China hacked. I found that story on Wired, yes, and they got a hack from some group in China that I don't think they know what group, but they admit that they were hacked. So I don't think it's anything major, but we'll go through the story. And then Apple to pay $95 million to consumers for Siri spying. And that sounds heavy duty, $95 million. Well, the most any one person can get is $20. So don't get too excited about it. But I thought we should go over the story. And this was kind of cool. I thought the budget-friendly Samsung Galaxy A16 coming to the U.S. and it's coming soon this month. And I found that story on CNET, so we'll take a look at that story. And this is a $200 phone, so if you're looking for a nice budget-friendly Samsung Galaxy phone, that's probably it. And then the last story I said is Facebook fooling advertisers counting bots as users. And I found it on a site called futurism.com. But it seems like Facebook is losing lots of people. But if you put the bots out there, which they admit they're doing, do the advertisers think these are real people? Maybe so. So we'll take a look at that. And that'll be our last story for the week. But keep in mind, next Tuesday is the exciting day for me anyway, as a OnePlus 13. Looking forward to the OnePlus 13, especially when the OnePlus 12 is one of my best phones of the year. So that's our preview. So we had hi from Elno, we had hi from Brian, and we had hi from Minette. So three of the greatest subscribers anybody has ever had. So since there's nothing else new, we'll head on down with the stories. Now, of course, as usual, if it's just me, it's going to be a quick night. So be prepared for that. So I said, like the new enhanced visual search in iOS 18, there's an included risk. And like I said, nothing heavy. And this was on Tom's Guide. Apple's new photo feature in iOS 18 is sending data to its servers, and nobody seemed to know that, how to turn it off. And that's why it's not a big deal. You can turn it off. And that's by Amber Bowman, published yesterday. Enhanced visual search comes enabled by default, and that's the thing. In iOS 18, it's enabled by default and could be putting your privacy at risk. So I just thought it's something we should look at. So let me drop this into Reader View and get rid of these ads. Amber Bowman. I guess I didn't say it right, did I? Many of the changes brought on by Apple Intelligence are centered around the camera and images on your phone, like making a movie out of your stored photos or generative image editing. But natural language search, which lets you find photos by describing them using regular language, was one of our favorites. And they didn't know about this till somebody else let them know either. In a new blog post, though, developer Jeff Johnson has shed light on some privacy concerns around this feature, which was intended to help people use their iPhones to more easily search for landmarks and other points of interest. Many Apple users, I think, have already updated their devices to iOS 18, including me, without being aware that it comes equipped with a photo feature called Enhanced Visual Search. And I've tried some of the new features, haven't tried that one though. So I was glad I ran into this. Here's how it works. The device detects a point of interest in a photo. The example getting thrown around is the Eiffel Tower. Then on device AI creates a mathematical fingerprint, or what Apple has described, they have to make a compliment, as a vector embedding is calculated for that region of the image. It's a mathematical fingerprint. That's all it is. This vector embedding or fingerprint is then sent to Apple servers, and this is what they didn't tell anybody, with a relay in the middle for privacy alongside fake queries, so the server doesn't know which one is legit. Cupertino servers then return possible matches in an encrypted form. So I guess the idea is, all right, they don't know which one is the real one, so I guess we're supposed to think that's our protection. But they didn't tell us stuff was being sent back to a server from our phone. While Apple's explanations have assured users this is all done while keeping photo data private, Johnson sees this as a privacy violation that was introduced silently and without consent, and that's the problem. He writes in his blog, "I never requested that my on-device experiences be enriched by phoning home to Cupertino. If something happens entirely on my computer, then it's private. Whereas if my computer sends data to the manufacturer of the computer, then it's not private, or at least not entirely private." And he's 100% correct there. The Enhances Visual Search feature is part of the iOS 18 and macOS 15, so it's going to be on my MacBook Air too, released from September 16th, 2024. So all of that's on both of my devices. And the company's overview of the features at that time did not explain or mention this trade-off. They did say that search would now include natural language queries and expanded understanding, but that doesn't really explain to users that their photo data is being sent back to Apple servers by default. Right, they told nobody that right off the bat. On October 24th, though, a month later, there was a brief explanation in a highly technical Apple document on machine learning and homomorphic encryption with a reference to EVS and privacy, explaining the feature allows for searching for landmarks or points of interest. There's also a legal document which offers more information. However, the reality is that few users access or read these notices, and fewer yet understand the information contained within them. So, how to turn the Enhanced Visual Search EVS feature off, and that's why it's not a big deal, because you can go in and turn it off. So you can see here, if you're worried about, I'll read down here and then we'll go back up and look. If you're worried about one of the best iPhones sending your photos and the data then can turn back to Apple, Enhanced Visual Search is easy enough to turn off. Keep in mind, though, this feature comes enabled by default, so you may also want to let your privacy-conscious friends and family know about it too. You may have to provide tech support for some of your older relatives. They can't be older than me, can they? I'm almost 80. But here's how to turn it off on your iPhone. You can opt out of the EVS feature anytime by going to Settings, Apps, Photos. From there, when you scroll all the way to the bottom, you will see an option to toggle Enhanced Visual Search on or off. So we'll go back up and look. You go here you are in Settings, you go to Photos, and in Photos, you come down to Enhanced Visual Search, and there's the toggle. So you can just turn it off, and nothing's being sent, as far as I know, anyway, back to Apple anymore. But yeah, they put that on by default and didn't tell anybody, so glad we got this. If you're using one of the best MacBooks or even a Mac Mini M4, you can do the same thing by opening the Photos app, clicking on Settings within the app, and in the General tab, you'll find the option to toggle Enhanced Visual Search on or off. Keep in mind, though, that if there is a landmark or other point of interest you do want to use this feature with, you can always re-enable it by following the steps detailed above in reverse. So like I said, not a big deal because it's easy to turn on and off. Hopefully, we'll see Apple address the fact that enhanced visual search sends photo data back to its servers sometime soon. In the meantime, though, at least you now know how to turn off this feature that comes enabled by default in iOS 18. Since I have it turned on, I figure maybe some of you guys have it turned on already. So I thought it was a nice story to start with and let you know how easy it is to turn that feature off. So nothing else new in the comments. So we will go on to to me, the big story of the week. Net neutrality struck down by Sixth Circuit Court. And I found this on The Verge. Net neutrality eviscerated by appeals court ruling. Emboldened by the downfall of Chevron deference, the Sixth Circuit struck down the FCC's net neutrality rules. And when they did the Chevron story, and we'll get into that as we go down to the story, I did a report on that too. And this was yesterday by Lauren Feiner. Feiner, probably. All right, so let's go into reader view and get rid of these ads. Federal net neutrality rules, which briefly came back from the dead under the Biden administration, have been struck down by the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. The three-judge panel ruled that the Federal Communications Commission does not have the authority to impose net neutrality rules, I would have thought they would, on internet service providers. The FCC sought to reclassify ISPs as common carriers under Title II of the Communications Act in order to impose policies meant to prevent them from discriminating against different internet traffic, like slowing speeds or blocking content. And if you remember a few years ago, we would get a lot of stories about Apple and T-Mobile and AT&T slowing speeds. This was meant to stop that. We haven't had issues with it in the last few years that I know about, but now they can do it. And what can we do about it? Nothing. Ryan said, just turn that bad boy off. Okay, good for you, Brian. I'm glad I gave you that story. Okay. But the judges disagreed with the agency's interpretation of how ISPs could be classified and were emboldened, the judges were emboldened, by the recent downfall of Chevron deference, a legal doctrine that instructed courts to defer to regulatory agencies in many cases. After the Supreme Court did away with that principle in 2024, and we did report on that story, courts became more free to favor their own interpretations over the judgment of expert agencies. Net neutrality was immediately seen as a prime target to be struck down without Chevron. While the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld previous iterations of net neutrality, the Sixth Circuit judges note that it relied on Chevron to do so. So they're saying when the D.C. Circuit upheld the net neutrality, it was because Chevron was still in force, but now it's no longer in force, and they were basing it on that. Unlike past challenges that the D.C. Circuit considered under Chevron, we no longer afford deference to the FCC's reading of the statute, they write. We acknowledge that the workings of the internet are complicated and dynamic, and that the FCC has significant expertise in overseeing this technical and complex area. So they acknowledge it because they're still not accepting it. The ruling says, citing an earlier decision, after the fall of Chevron, and continues, that capability, if you will, cannot be used to overwrite the plain meaning of the statute. But that's open to interpretation, isn't it? All right, we're back. All right, I switched Wi-Fi, guys, because we had the same issue last week. I was buffering for a while, so I hope you guys are still following me. Okay. Okay, so this left the judges free to wax philosophical about phrases like offering of a capability and information services, finally parsing the distinction between those and more heavily regulated telecommunication services. The existence of a fact or a thought. Now, this is pretty vague stuff, in my opinion. The existence of a fact or a thought in one's mind is not information like zeros and ones used by computers. One part of the ruling reads, I wonder how much they know about computers. You're talking my stuff as a programmer for years now. It asserts that speaking reduces a thought to sound and writing reduces a thought to text. During a phone call, one creates audio information by speaking, which the telephone service transmits to an interlocutor who responds in turn. That's the person who's listening. But crucially, the telephone service merely transmits that which the speaker creates. It does not access information. Like I said, this is very vague stuff here. I think of Alan Parsons' project, Psychobabble. Oh, Psychobabble. That's what it sounds like to me, anyway. Net neutrality was already in danger even before this ruling came out. In a suit filed against the FCC by broadband and industry associations. And yes, when we reported on the Chevron thing, the broadband industry, like crazy, came out to sue to stop net neutrality. The appeals court had already blocked the net neutrality rules from taking effect. That's right, they were on hold. During oral arguments in October, the three Republican-appointed judges prodded the attorneys about the correct interpretation of the Communications Act and about deference to agency expertise. So they didn't want them deferring to the agency. With President-elect Donald Trump, under whom net neutrality was previously repealed, that's true, due to take office in mere weeks, this could be the last we hear about the attempt to reclassify broadband providers as common carriers for a while. FCC Chair Jessica Rosenworcel, I think she was a great FCC chair, called on lawmakers to take up the mantle of creating rules to safeguard the open internet. Consumers across the country have told us that again and again, that they want an internet that is fast, open, and fair, she said in a statement. With this decision, it's clear that Congress now needs to heed their call, take up the charge for net neutrality, and put open internet principles in federal law. Now, keep in mind, this first was put into law in the Obama administration, and then the Trump administration took it away. The Biden administration put it back under Jessica Rosenworcel, and now the Sixth Circuit has cut it down. So it's not Trump group that's doing this. It's the Sixth Circuit. Republican Commissioner Brandon Carr, Trump's pick to lead the agency once he assumes office, issued a lengthy statement calling the ruling a good win for the country. And I think he was already on it, but he wasn't the chair under Jessica Rosenworcel was. So I'm thinking maybe she'll still be there too, but he'll be in charge. He calls net neutrality rules an attempt by the Biden administration, and it was originally the Obama administration, to expand the government's control over every feature of the internet ecosystem, and says the push for the rules was a waste of time. I disagree. While he's pleased with the ruling, he adds the work to unwind the Biden administration's regulatory overreach will continue. But this wasn't Biden's baby. Former FCC chair Ajit Pai, who none of us liked, who led the movement to repeal the ruling during the first Trump administration, took a victory lap on X. For a decade, I've argued that so-called net neutrality regulations are unlawful, not to mention pointless. I totally disagree. Today, the Sixth Circuit held exactly that. So the fight was ongoing, but I think the article may be right. It might be a while before we hear about this again, since the Sixth Circuit struck it down. And this is before even Trump took office. So I just thought that was an important story to let you guys know about. And nothing else new, so we'll go on to our third story. U.S. Treasury Department admits China hacked, and I found this on Wired, so let's go check it out. Like, I always try to come up with stories that you guys might find interesting, but you're probably not going to see everywhere. And I think I succeeded this time. U.S. Treasury Department admits it got hacked by China. Treasury says hackers assessed certain unclassified documents. It doesn't sound like they got anything major, but who knows? In a major breach, but experts believe the attack's impacts could prove to be more significant as new details emerge. So I guess they're still investigating. And this was December 30th. And it was, let me drop it into Readerville because it's easier to read the name of the lady that wrote this. So it was written by Lily Hay Newman. And sometimes I have to go back twice to get it to drop into Readerview properly. Okay. So, I'm going to say, I thought I heard somebody coming in. And here's Ted. Well, at least here's Ted's microphone. Yes, are you there, Ted?
Yeah. Hey, what's up? Happy New Year.
Okay. Happy New Year to you, sir. So, you going to grace us with your face today?
Not at the moment. I'm in a different circumstance right now.
You should know, folks, the last time he came in like this, I said, this is black on black, isn't it? I'm incorrigible, I know. Okay. Should I go on with the story?
Did you already start it?
No, just got the title. That's all I've read. You want to read it? It's the Treasury Department got hacked.
Yeah, I knew it. I was
you got it up already?
Yep.
All right, you got it up. I've already got it in Readerview, so whenever you're ready.
Treasury says hackers accessed certain unclassified documents in a major breach, but I believe the attack impacts could prove to be more significant as new details emerge.
Can you see it, everybody?
No, hold on. Okay. A disclosure notice to the United States Congress on Monday revealed that the U.S. Treasury Department suffered a breach early this month that allowed hackers to remotely access some Treasury computers and certain unclassified documents. The attackers exploited vulnerabilities in the remote tech support software provided by the identity and access management firm BeyondTrust. That's what they get using third parties. And Treasury said
that's all our government ever does is use contractors.
Treasury said in this letter to loggers that the incident has been attributed to the China state-sponsored Advanced Persistent Threat Actor. Reuters first reported the disclosure and its contents. In the notice, Treasury officials said that the BeyondTrust notified the agency of the incident on December 8th after attackers were able to steal an authentication key and use it to bypass system defenses and gain access to Treasury workstations. The compromised BeyondTrust service has been taken offline, and at this time there is no evidence indicating the threat actor has continued to access the Treasury information. Treasury Assistant Secretary for Management Aditi Hedekar wrote the lawmakers, in accordance with Treasury policy, intrusions attributable to an APT are considered a major cybersecurity incident. The disclosure says that the Treasury has been collaborating with the FBI, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Never heard about them. Never heard of them. Was it CISA? Maybe I have. And the intelligence community broadly, as well as private forensic investigators to evaluate the situation. Treasury and the FBI did not immediately return Wire's request for additional information about the breach. CISA referred questions back to the Treasury Department. And scroll up a bit, please. In response to questions about the Treasury Department's breach notification, Beyond Trust spokesperson Mike Bradshaw said in a statement that Beyond Trust previously identified and took measures to address a security incident in early December 2024 that involved the remote support product. Beyond Trust notified the limited number of customers who were involved, and it has been working to support those customers since then. Well, on
This is
December
the
8th,
date that it actually happened.
On December 8th, Beyond Trust published an alert that it had continued to update about a security incident that involved a number of report support software as a service customers. Through the notification, though the notification does not say that the U.S. Treasury was one of the impacted customers, the timeline and details appear to line up with the Treasury disclosure, including acknowledgement from Beyond Trust that attackers compromised an application programming interface API key. Jesus Christ. The
Exactly.
Beyond Trust alert mentions 2 exploited vulnerabilities involved in the situation: the critical command injection vulnerability and the medium severity command injection vulnerability. CISA added the former CV to its known exploited vulnerabilities catalog on December 19th. They learned something that day. Command injection vulnerabilities are common application flaws. Scroll up a bit. And scroll up.
Okay.
That can be easily exploited to gain access to targeted systems. I cannot believe that we're seeing command injection vulnerabilities in 2024 in any products, let alone a secure remote access product that's supposed to have additional vetting for use by the U.S. government. Jake Williams, Vice President of Research and Development at the cybersecurity consultancy Hunter Strategy and former NSA hacker. They are some of the most easiest bugs to identify and remediate at this level. At this point. Beyond Trust is an accredited federal risk and authorization management program vendor, but Williams speculated that it is possible that the Treasury was using a non-FedRAMP version of the company's remote support and privileged remote access cloud products. If the breach actually affected FedRAMP certified cloud infrastructure, though, Williams says, it might be the first breach of one and almost certainly the first time FedRAMP cloud tools were abused to facilitate remote access to a customer systems. The breach comes as U.S. officials have been scrambling to address a massive espionage campaign compromising U.S. telecoms that has been attributed to the China-backed hacking group known as Salt Typhoon. White House officials told reporters on Friday that Salt Typhoon breached 9 U.S. telecoms.
I reported on that story 2 weeks ago, but they're not sure that this was the same group. Okay.
We wouldn't leave our homes, our offices unlocked, and yet our critical infrastructure, the private companies owning and operating our critical infrastructure, often do not have basic cybersecurity practices in place that would make our infrastructure riskier, costlier, and harder for countries and criminals to attack. Ann Neuberger, Deputy NSA advisor? No, Deputy
National Security Advisor. Yeah.
For cyber and emerging technology, said on Friday. Treasury, CISA, and FBI did not respond to Wire's questions about whether the actor that breached Treasury was specifically Salt Typhoon. Treasury said in the disclosure to Koch that they would provide more information about the incident in the department's mandated 30-day supplemental notification report. Whoa, that reminds me. What about the Secret Services report they had about Trump's shooting? That should have been out. Did that come out?
Yeah, they haven't. I've heard somebody talking about, but I don't think they've released it yet, or at least not fully.
That's supposed to be done. They said it'll be released in 90 days, wasn't it? Or was that 180 days? It was 90 days.
I'm thinking it was 90 days, but I'm not sure.
As details of continue to emerge, Hunter Strategies Williams says that the scale and scope of the breach may even be larger than it currently appears. I expect the impact to be more significant than access to just a few unclassified documents.
Okay, let me say a couple of things about. I have a little experience in this kind of stuff. Now, where he said, let me go back up here. He suspected they were using a non-FedRAMP version of the company's remote support, and that's probably true because I would think if they were using the actual FedRAMP certified cloud infrastructure, it would be locked down better. But let me say, I've had top secret clearances for the FBI. I've had top secret clearances for the Air Force and for the Marines. And I can tell you, they're always using contractors and contracting firms for all of this stuff. And some of the contracting firms take this stuff seriously and lock things down right, and some don't. I can tell you of the three that I've worked on, the FBI was by far the best one because that one, we worked on that for 2 or 3 years, and they actually had 15 people who worked for the FBI programmers who came to the building and checked every single thing we did for 2 years. And that was one of the best projects I ever worked on in my life because of that. But when I worked in the Marines and the Air Force stuff, very haphazard. Nobody's checking much of anything. So you get what you get. Oh, and that FBI project that I worked on is the criminal database that they see right now. That's the one I worked on.
Still
So
going.
anyway, you with these contractors, you get some that take care of the stuff. You get some that don't. And what you hope is you have somebody in the government, usually like a general or somebody, really looking at what they're doing. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. That's just how it is. So just wanted to get that out. So it is still being investigated to some degree. What Brian said. Brian said, a government always wants all control. Oh, yeah, that was in the net neutrality story. Yeah. Okay. All right. Am I going on?
Yes.
Okay. I want to make sure. All right. Next one is for me. Apple to pay $95 million to consumers for Siri spying. And like I said, it sounds like a lot. Nobody gets more than $20 though. That's on The
It's
Verge.
not a
We'll go
lot
take
at
a look.
all. It's what?
No, it's
That's
not.
what? That's like $1, $10 at most to Apple.
Yeah, it's not
or
much.
that.
Okay, Apple will pay $95 million to people who were spied on by Siri. You could get up to $20 for every device you bought and accidentally activated Siri on. And that's the key. We'll see that as we get down. And accidentally activated. Now, I couldn't get anything because although in that time frame I owned, I think, 5 different Apple devices, did I ever accidentally activate Siri? I don't think so. So I wouldn't even be eligible for this. So this is by Addie Robertson, and it's from yesterday. So let me drop it into Reader View. Apple has agreed to a $95 million settlement with users whose conversations were inadvertently captured by its Siri voice assistant and potentially overheard by human employees. And I'll explain some of that later. I have a little expertise on this kind of stuff too. The proposed settlement, reported by Bloomberg, could pay many U.S.-based Apple product owners up to $20 per device. So if you have 5 devices, you could get $100 for up to 5 Siri-enabled devices. It still requires approval by a judge, so it's not a done deal yet. And you'll see the criteria gets a little tighter as we go down. If approved, the settlement would apply to a subset of U.S.-based people, and it's only U.S.-based people, who own or bought a Siri-enabled iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, MacBook, iMac, HomePod, iPod Touch, or Apple TV between September 17th, 2014 and December 31st, 2024. So a big time frame But a user would also get this need to meet one other major criteria, and it is major. They must swear under oath that they accidentally activated Siri during a conversation intended to be confidential or private. So if you're not sure that you could swear that you accidentally activated Siri, you're not even eligible for this. Individual payouts would depend on how many people claim the money. So if you apply, you could end up receiving less than the $20 maximum cap. Now, keep in mind that is per device, though. The initial class action suit against Apple followed a 2019 report by The Guardian, which alleged Apple third-party contractors regularly hear confidential medical information, drug deals, and recordings of couples having sex while working on Siri quality control. I need to stop here and explain why that might be true. If you're a developer or a programmer working on something for Apple, okay, so you're a third party and they hire you to work on this stuff, you can fudge data, you can just make up data, or if you want it to be effective when you really put it in, well, you want real data. So what they probably did, I'm almost certain, was copied real data from the real system, and then they sent this real data to these people. So yes, they could have heard all kinds of recordings, but that's simply because you're using real data in the test system, not that they're actively listening in the live system. So while Siri is supposed to be triggered by a deliberate wake word, a whistleblower said that accidental triggers were common. That I did not know. I know it happens a lot with Google, claiming something as simple as the sound of a zipper could wake Siri up. That surprised me. Apple told The Guardian that only a small portion of Siri recordings were passed through Congress. See, I told you they would have had to pass that so they could use it for testing purposes. And it later offered a formal apology and said it will no longer retain audio recordings. And I disagree with that. I think if you want developers to give you real information, you need real data. You copy it like they did. I think they did the right thing here. The plaintiffs in the Apple lawsuit, one of whom was a minor, claimed their iPhones had recorded them on multiple occasions using Siri, sometimes after they hadn't uttered a wake word. Well, yeah, if your zipper can set it off, I can understand that. Apple wasn't the only company accused of letting people hear their confidential recordings. Google and Amazon also use contractors that listen in on recorded conversations. I'm sure only with copied data, again, including accidentally captured ones, and there's a similar suit against Google pending. So I don't blame Apple, but, if you can set it off with a zipper, yeah, that's kind of weird, I think. So, but you have to swear you accidentally set off Siri. So I don't think many people are going to get paid to this. That's just my guess. Let me see what
$20 there. They're free to just try. Apparently, though, if it was that easy, of course
right?
you could easily swear. I can come. I'm sure it was just.
Now we're back to what I said. Yeah, I could easily swear, but who's listening to what I'm swearing? Oh, yeah, God's listening. I'm not going to easily swear something and lie about it. That's the point.
But you don't have to lie
Brian
about it. Can you say with 100% certainty that your Siri was not spying on you, was not listening, was not accidentally triggered?
But what did the article say? The article said you would have to swear under oath that it was accidentally kicked off. Well, I couldn't swear to that under oath. How would I know? So I would be lying if I said that under oath.
How would you know that it wasn't doing it? That's the thing.
You have to swear. But you have to swear that you knew it was listening. That's the point.
Why is it on the consumer? Why can't Apple have to prove that, hey, you're not the effective class?
Because the suit, court case says you have to swear. They didn't say Apple had to swear. This is all up to a judge. So I couldn't swear to that. Brian says Siri, the worst assistant. Supposedly Siri's going to get good real soon once it gets the AI working. So we'll see.
Good at spying, better.
Right now, to me, Gemini is better, and so is Copilot. So I think
Yeah.
they're much better right now. But Siri should be getting better at some point with one of the updates coming to our iPhones and other devices.
Yeah. Google
So
Assistant.
that was
better.
just an interesting story, but I did want to defend the developers. You know, you have to copy real data if you want to make an effective change to a system. You need real data, not fake data. So I don't blame them for copying. And Brian says, I said Siri will be working soon at some point. Brian says, by the time that happens, the iPhone 17 will be out. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if you're right, Brian, because Apple has really been dragging their feet. They've been advertising the AI stuff since August. And, you know, we barely had the AI stuff, most of it having to do with photos. So you're probably right. But anyway, they say we're supposed to get it this year. But yeah, it could easily be in the third quarter after they release 17. All right. You up for the next one, Ted?
Yep.
All right. The budget-friendly Samsung Galaxy A16 coming to the U.S. This was on CNET. So let me pull it up. And all right, Ted, go ahead and read it. After you read the subheading, I'll switch it over to
By
read it.
Mike Sorrentino, Samsung Galaxy A16 comes to US at $200 with 6 years of updates. Samsung's new
Right.
lower cost phone will get support for years to come. They're a bunch of do-gooders. How about that, George?
I think this sounds like a pretty good deal to me. Oh, Brian, thank you as usual, sir. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Samsung is bringing the $200 Galaxy A16 phone and the $60 Galaxy Fit 3 fitness tracker to the US, with the A16 getting 6 years of updates. Will it last 6
That's
years?
pretty good
though?
for a budget phone.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it lasted 6 years. This makes the Galaxy A16 one of the lowest cost phones to get a software and security update commitment longer than 5 years, which could be a benefit for someone looking to buy a simple phone that will be updated. Maybe it's for company use. Samsung's Galaxy A16 has already been released in other territories, but it'll start selling in the US on January 9th, according to the company's Thursday announcement. The phone costs $129 in the UK, $349 in Australia. This year's phone gets a slight refresh over the last year's A15, including a larger 6.7-inch display with a 90 hertz refresh rate. Wow. It also moved to
Pretty
Samsung's
good
own.
for a $200 phone, I think.
I know, yeah. It's also moving to using Samsung's own Exynos 1330 processor instead of a MediaTek processor, like the one in the Galaxy A15 included. The Galaxy A16 appears to have a similar camera system to the A15, including a 50-megapixel wide lens, 5-megapixel ultra-wide, a 2-megapixel macro lens, and a 13-megapixel front-facing camera. Also carrying forward from last year will be a 25-wire charging speed, a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, 128 gigabytes of storage alongside 4 gigabytes of RAM, a micro SD card slot that allows expanding up to 1.5 terabytes of storage. The A16 continues Samsung's line of entry-level handsets, which are among the most popular phones sold in the States. Last year, Galaxy A15 ranks as the 5th best-selling smartphone in the US as of September 2024, according to research firm Counterpoint Research, behind 4 of Apple's iPhone models. In the Galaxy A15 review, I was particularly impressed by the promise of years of software updates and the 5 years of security updates, but I did find the phone to run slowly. We'll have to test the A16 to see if its new Exynos 1330 processor can speed things up, but the promise of a longer software and security update window does set a new standard amongst phones in the $200 range. Meanwhile, the Galaxy Fit 3 fitness tracker is being touted as the lower cost, simpler way of tracking fitness and health than the $300 Galaxy Watch 7 or the $650 Galaxy Watch Ultra. Samsung said the Fit 3 is rated for 13 days of battery life and includes exercise and sleep tracking along with an always-on display option for digital watch faces.
Yeah. So I think now for $200, I could see me picking that up, but I'm going to wait to see if it is better with the Exynos processor over the MediaTek that they had last year. But if it's a decent running phone, I may pick that up for $200 because I'm probably not going to get the expensive ones this year. So I thought that was a nice story that because a lot of people seem to like the A15, and this should be a little bit better, I would think.
We'll see what the Exynos has.
Exactly. That's why I'm going to wait till it's out to see if I'm going to pick it up or not. Okay. One last story. This one is on me. Is Facebook fooling advertisers counting bots as users? That's my speculation. And this was on a site called futurism.com, which I hadn't heard of before. And I've seen a couple other stories pointing the same story out during the course of the day today. People are disgusted by Facebook's plan to deploy AI-powered users. Translation, our real users are quitting the platform, so we will fill our community with fake users instead. That's why I said, are they trying to fool the advertisers? Because advertisers wouldn't know. And this was January 1st for Noor Al-Sibai. So let me drop it into reader view. Folks on social media are in an uproar after Meta announced that it's planning to load Facebook up with AI users better known as bots. First reported by the Financial Times, this plan to populate the dying, notice they call it a dying social network, with these so-called characters is geared towards driving engagement, even though other platforms, including Meta's Instagram, have been roiled by, I don't know what they mean roiled. Must be a different word than that. But anyway, they've had unauthorized bots in Instagram for years. We expect these AIs to actually, over time, exist on our platforms kind of in the same way that accounts do. Connor Hayes, Meta's vice president of product for generative AI, told the FT, and that Hayes is not connected to me, just so you know that. They have bios and profile pictures, and they'll have bios and profile pictures and be able to generate and share content powered by AI on the platform. That's where we see all of this going. So yeah, you could actually fool people to thinking they were real people. While it's unclear when this plan will move forward, Hayes said that there are already hundreds of thousands of characters that have been created on the site, though most for now remain private. In other words, they're not going to tell us, is my guess. Unsurprisingly, users on the Futurology subreddit saw right through the ruse. I agree. Translation, our real users are quitting the platform, so we will fill our community with fake users instead, one user wrote. That's exactly what they're doing. As another aptly put it, the advertisers buying space on Facebook won't be able to tell the difference either. I hope they read this article. So it's all just more clicks and more ad revenue. The potential implications for advertising on the platform overall seem to strike a chord with the Redditors. With advertising being their bread and butter and pretty much the reason they still exist, how is this legal and not misrepresenting numbers to clients? I agree. Another user mused. If they tell advertisers that they get X number of impressions, engagement, etc., but those aren't real people anymore, that seems like straight up lying. I totally agree. Wild that they're just coming right out with it and doubling down. I'm thinking somebody already knew about it, otherwise they wouldn't have come out with it. For others, the prospect of fake users is yet another reason they're ditching Facebook. I can see that. I rarely check my Facebook feed at all anymore, and when I do, it's almost entirely made up of pages I don't follow and have never interacted with, another user wrote. There's no way to actually get rid of them, just briefly mute them. So now we can look forward to our actual contacts being even harder to see among a bunch of fictitious users too. Unfortunately, those left on the platform, get this, the elderly and assorted right-wingers who are regularly duped by obvious AI slop, I love that, may not be able to tell the difference. I think the old people that use it the most are the least likely to notice, one user concluded. And that's probably true because I've been saying for a long time that Facebook is mostly full of a bunch of grandparents. That's my impression. So anyway, I just hope the advertisers see that and do something about it. So that's our last story for the day. And Ted, I'm so glad you came in again.
Hey, I've got to say, I had
Are
some
you
free
talking?
time. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
keep making this free time for us. I'm loving it. So let me stop this screen. Well, I'm glad we got to
hold
hear
on.
your voice this week. How was your New Year's? You there, Ted?
Yeah, sorry about that. I heard some
Sounds like he's
loud
moving
Mexican
around. Okay.
Spanish music, and thought someone was trying to steal my bike again.
I said, how was your New Year?
It was great. Sorry.
Okay.
Fantastic. Spent it
Well,
with
if you think about it, say a prayer for Eleanor because she's been sick since Monday.
Monday.
But and she's still sick. But I have to give her credit. She did stay up for the ball to drop, even though she was laying on the couch. But she made it all the way to the New Year, so I got to give her credit for that. But anyway, anybody who would like to say a prayer for Eleanor to get better, please do so. She's been feeling pretty bad this week.
Get better, Eleanor. Get your rest,
Okay.
though.
Exactly. Oh yeah, she hasn't been doing no chores. Her body keeps pushing her back to the bed, but yeah, she's had a pretty rough week. Okay, so Ted, I'm glad you were in here. I'm glad you had time for us. I hope you keep managing to do that, and I'm glad for everybody who came in for our first show of the year. So let's hope 2025 continues like this and we at least get Ted, and maybe next time we'll even get his face. Who knows? So, folks, I'll be back next week, and if we're very blessed, so will Ted. So we will see you next week. I hope everybody has a very blessed week. Okay, maybe Ted. I hope everybody has a very blessed weekend, and let's always remember we all do better when we love each other. See you next week, folks.